My clients asked me something pretty unusual. In this video, you'll see me paint one of my paintings all over again. No, it wasn't a mistake. My clients actually loved one of my earlier paintings, Looking Down the Stairs, and when they found out it was already acquired by someone else, they decided they wanted something like it. So I set out to recreate one of my most popular paintings. I began with a light wash of blue, and it's okay to get it over other subjects like the buildings. The wash will become a cool underlayer on those surfaces. I've used liquid mask already for all the snow-covered parts in the scene. And I started with the faint subjects in the background, including blue, to keep things distant from us. I'm using various shades of yellow ochre and burnt sienna throughout. Those colors are pretty ubiquitous here in the city. So turning to the building on the left, I've wet the whole surface, and that really helps with getting coverage over a large area of the painting in a small amount of time. Wetting the surface allows the pigments to spread apart and really cover a larger area more easily. And you'll see I'm okay with adding some blue here in the surface of the building. There is a pretty blue overcast tint to the whole scene, so I'm kind of accentuating that atmosphere by adding blue into some of these elements. And again, using burnt sienna, yellow ochre, combining them together often to produce the various shades of buildings that we see here. I've used liquid mask over all of the snow-covered parts in the image. It makes it easier for me to avoid painting over those snow-covered parts. Normally with a small personal sketch, I would simply just carefully avoid those areas, relying on my brush technique, but with a larger custom artwork, I wanted to be more careful. So liquid mask is a reliable way to preserve the white of the paper, which will become the snow later on. Once I take off the liquid mask, I can also add some shading to those areas if needed to give some dimensionality to the snow. Here I'm adding darks to the concrete sections to the right of the stairs. Those are helping me to really start to visualize the shapes of those elements. Now I'm working on the windows on the left side. Because that building is basically in the foreground, I want to be a little bit more detailed and crisp with the details on that side of the building. It means being more careful with my lines and my shading, and there are quite a few more elements that I need to be careful with, like the air conditioners that are sticking out of the windows and the ledges, the shadows underneath the ledges. Those things will help to really bring it home and helps remind the viewer that this is a realistic painting. Now, this was actually one of two paintings that my clients commissioned me to make. They loved the original Looking Down the Stairs piece and wanted me to recreate a version for them. The other painting is a bus stop scene at night, which I've talked about in another video. Now, you may be wondering, why would I be willing to paint the same subject matter again? Before doing this, I never could have imagined repainting one of my pieces. But actually, from a collector's point of view, it kind of makes sense. They want an original, but it's already been sold, so why not ask the artist if they can make another one? Honestly, the original stairs painting I made was one of my favorite paintings, and it has gone on to become one of my best-known paintings. It was in the subway station here for the past 2 years. I sold the original, and I also collaborated with another artist to create a remix of the piece, and that one also got sold. So I actually welcome the idea of creating a new version of the painting, of creating something that could extend the life and spirit of that first one even further. I'd never been asked before to do this, but it felt like the right painting for me to try it on. And it felt like a good challenge I wanted to take on. It definitely was more fun than I expected. I also made sure that it wasn't going to be an exact copy of the original. I wanted to keep it interesting. I wanted to avoid just copying the first one. So I made sure that we found inspiration in a different set of tones, a different composition, even different time of year. I ended up taking lots of reference photos over several months at different times of day, and ultimately we agreed on a combination of 2 photos, taking the color and tone from one and the wintry scene from the other. One of the challenges of this piece is all the structural elements. I like to make sure that the windows and the building edges show proper perspective. That's the detailed part of me. I like to get things pretty accurate. It just helps to make it a more convincing painting, especially since it's a very familiar scene to me and to people in this part of Manhattan. And I wanted it to be accurate for my clients as well. You'll see me painting over areas multiple times, and that's because watercolor dries lighter. So I like to put down a general underlayer of a surface, especially cars and other man-made objects, and then go back in later to make areas darker and bolder. The most difficult part, I think, is the structures on both sides of the stairs. Since the concrete sections start out big and they get smaller and smaller as they get further away from us down the stairs, it's difficult to ensure that the faraway sections are accurate. But if I carefully work on the ones closest to us, closest to the viewer, it means we don't have to resolve the details of the faraway sections as much. Actually, the viewer's mind will fill in the rest of those elements, the rest of those blocks down there at the bottom of the stairs. Their minds will actually fill in the accuracy. So there's a little bit of psychological tweaking and strategy that I'm employing here. This part is fun for me where we're filling in some of the details on the left and right sides of the stairs, like the railings and the shadowed sections. Those darks really help to make everything pop and really add some dimension to what we're seeing. And it's probably my favorite part of the painting, when you get to start seeing the 3D rendering of some of these elements, which originally just was a blank piece of paper, but now we're starting to see some objects come out from the surface, and that's always really satisfying. Painting the undersides of the railing here that's closest to the viewer really starts to add to the depth of the painting overall, because the foreground is starting to be filled in. And as we get further and further down the stairs, the less detailed we really have to be. And actually, the more things start to just blend in to the background. And with some of the darks in the railings on the middle of the stairs, when you get to the bottom, it really starts to be indistinguishable from the shadows towards the bottom. The manhole cover is another element here where I felt like I needed to get it pretty accurate, just because it's very close up and it's something that people expect to see. I don't want it to just be abstract. I want it to really feel like there's a heavy piece of metal there. And I'm putting some of the finishing touches on the various dark areas, putting in the fire escapes of that building. There is a grit to this section of the stairs, and I try to capture that with the kind of smudges and dark areas that I'm painting in. You know, things aren't evenly painted. There are rough spots, like on the lampposts. That really helps to get across some of the griminess. I'm finally removing the liquid mask. This is the least enjoyable part because I feel like I'm going to rub off my skin. So I'm trying not to rip too hard because I don't want to mess up the paper either. And in the end, I carefully vacuum up the eraser crumbs. As I near the end, I work on refining details like the school bus and the lampposts. These are the details that will really help these elements pop. Again, there's snow in the areas that I took the liquid mask off from, so I'm going to be careful not to cover any of those areas, but I can go in and add some shading and some dimension into the snow. Here I'm putting in the faint lines of a chain link fence down there on the left side. Just a word about myself. I'm Francis Shui. I'm a working artist based in New York City. I started painting in midlife. I've now had 2 paintings displayed in the subway, including one now in the subway elevator here in Uptown Manhattan. I make custom paintings for clients, and I also teach a weekly watercolor class. And this May, I'll be the resident teaching artist down at Washington Square Park every Saturday. So come on down if you happen to be there. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe to see more of my artwork and process videos. You can also visit my website at art-francis.com, where you can see more of my original artwork and prints for sale, and also how to commission me for a custom artwork. Until the next time, go and paint.